Institutions of higher education are mandated to provide accessible learning environments for students with disabilities. Yet many struggle with finding a systematic approach to meet all learners' needs. In our shared mission to teach all learners, it is our imperative to understand how we might build upon accessibility compliance to reach academic equity with inclusive learning environments for all learners.
In this session, we will lead you through 2 case studies that challenge you to think beyond compliance toward universal design for learning and inclusive design. The first case is a digital learning initiative targeting incoming students. The Office of the Dean of the College set out to explore ways to empower incoming students to navigate their first year at Brown productively and meaningfully. We will explore how this design initiative extended across campus to include diverse stakeholders and groups to contribute and shape an asynchronous online workshop. The second case involves a content-rich introductory medicine course redesigned to meet changing accreditation requirements. The redesign explored ways to move away from a historically lecture-based instructional model toward a student-centered, competency-based teaching and learning methodology that aligned with the industry. The result was a course designed to leverage student voice and choice by incorporating principles of universal design for learning to promote industry-ready skills. Finally, we will share some things that you can do right now to increase access and equity in your projects.
So, what is inclusive design? Having an inclusive mindset is essential to this approach. Inclusive design is an approach to designing your projects, your courses, and or your research with your users in mind, rather than for them. This inclusive mindset, having an inclusive mindset, welcomes diverse people and perspectives, mainly those who are missing to engage in this process of designing your thing. I personally like to think of inclusive design as collaborative problem solving. It presents the opportunity for people with different experiences to collaborate by confronting design challenges. So I'm going to briefly describe the inclusive design process we used for developing and delivering the First Year at Brown online workshop, an initiative from the Office of the Dean of the College. So when we first started developing this course in 2016, the goal of the project was to empower new incoming students to navigate their first year at Brown meaningfully and productively before they arrived on campus. So specifically, who was this online workshop for? That is what we had to define next. The Office of the Dean of the College and those people around developing this goal, we decided that it was going to be for all first year, all transfer, and all resumed undergraduate education students. They were invited to and encouraged to go through this online workshop before they arrived on campus. It was also designed for the first year advisors, as well as the Meiklejohn peer advisors, so they would be able to get to know their advisees online before they arrived on campus. They would do this by viewing the submissions that students would make in Canvas or via Ask, Brown's online advising system. So once we had the goal and once we identified the audience, we assembled the core design team to develop and build this course. So who was on this team? This team included the Dean of the College, student support and academic deans, instructional designers, faculty advisors, undergraduate students, a web application specialist, and the media production group. And together, our experiences and perspectives would contribute to designing this online workshop for a broad audience. During and after the primary design phase was complete, the core design team selected focus groups and testers to review the online experience, the content, and the usability of the workshop. We selected faculty, administrators, as well as undergraduate students. We developed surveys to collect feedback and conducted web accessibility testing. And along the way, all of these different perspectives and people were involved in each step of this process. After each workshop, the online workshop concludes, a debrief meeting is organized by the core design team to look at the feedback, discuss the actual experience of running the workshop and being a user in the experience, and we determine those revisions. The core design team looks at the workshop surveys to inform any updates. And of course, along the way, new people are invited in and included in this revision process because things change from year to year. In short, why practice inclusive design? Well, from the beginning, we had flexible and adaptable designs. Being proactive has its benefits. We know it's easier to be proactive rather than respond and have to fix things when or if something goes awry. We talked and we worked with the users. Their lived experience really helped to develop this story. Be inclusive, not exclusive. We kept thinking, who else needs to be brought in to help inform and make design choices that avoids leaving anyone out? By inviting in multiple perspectives, we created opportunities for different groups to access something together in a meaningful and authentic way. More perspectives equals more access. This approach helped us confront unconscious biases as we considered how users from all walks of life would access and experience the design. The takeaway? Know your audience, know your objectives. Designing inclusively is an ongoing process. We can always be more inclusive and understanding of our users. As Dieter Ram says, you cannot understand good design if you don't understand and, of course, include the people.
When we think about universal design for learning, which is also referred to as UDL, I think it's good to focus on the message of this cartoon that's on this screen. Here we see animals of varying abilities in the picture, and their assessment involves them successfully climbing a tree. While some of the animals can get to the top, not all of them can climb in the traditional manner. Therefore, this is a monkey-favoring exam with rigid parameters that don't allow the other animals to express their way of getting to the top of the tree. Universal design for learning provides a solution to this traditionally rigid way of looking at teaching and learning. It is a framework for teaching and learning that aims to accommodate a broad spectrum of learners. It focuses on flexibility, accessibility, and customizability to promote equifinality over rigidity in instructional delivery. The goal of UDL is to adapt the learning experience for the learner rather than making the learner adapt to the learning experience. Now, traditionally, we think about teachers and students in this situation, but in reality, there are many ways that we can teach others new concepts. And so in a lot of ways, everybody is a teacher at some point and everybody is a learner. So this really does apply to all. The UDL framework ties in our knowledge from current neuroscience research that suggests no two brains consume and process information in exactly the same way. We're each influenced by sociocultural experiences as well as varying neuroability. And it debunks the myth that there is such a thing as the average human. UDL has 3 guidelines that speak to the brain's 3 distinct networks. The first is the affective network, which appeals to the learner's interests, excitement, or challenges. The second is the recognition network, the ways in which we gather, sort, and store new information. And the last is the strategic network, how we organize and express ideas. In thinking of these 3 networks, UDL is really about providing options for how learners experience the learning on all levels, and providing options for how learners build their knowledge, consume their knowledge, and how they demonstrate their knowledge. UDL framework moves away from a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching and learning and biases toward equity by encouraging multiple options for learners to build, demonstrate, and access their knowledge in a deep and meaningful way. To provide you with an example of UDL in action, I'm going to provide an example of a course in maternal and child health, which is in the Masters of Public Health program. The overarching goal of this course was for students to demonstrate a deep understanding of the range of career opportunities that span the maternal and child healthcare profession. This includes nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, physicians, lawyers, psychologists, teachers. This was designed as a content-heavy course involving in-depth teaching around many areas of each discipline. Commonly in a survey course such as this, the instructor would historically assess students' mastery of achieving the goal by having them write a research essay that all students would do the same thing. In the original design of this course, for the final assessments, students were asked to write a research paper that identified gaps in the industry at large, make recommendations for closing those gaps, and establish implications for future practice. Historically, all students write the same style essay with similar content, but with mixed results of success and engagement by the students. In a course redesign, the instructor took what was predominantly lecture-based course with a massive amount of content to cover and applied the UDL principles. In this way, he was intentional in planning multiple means for students to engage, receive, and demonstrate knowledge. The course is now designed in such a way where students can self-select their research pathway based on their interests, and they engage with their peers in the course in a form of community of practice, something that they would do and see in the professional field. Content was delivered by the instructor face-to-face, but there was also a lot of flipped content, and also regular guests who were local practitioners who would come to the class for guest lectures. And then students also went into the community to interview practitioners directly to get anecdotal evidence in supplement of their research. The final assessment was no longer a boilerplate research essay, but rather an opportunity for students to engage in authentic assessment. Students were asked to research their discipline of choice, connect it to other disciplines in maternal and child health care to identify the gaps, then develop a product proof of concept, like a website, a blog, or a policy paper even, that was specific to the needs of that discipline area. While the MPH example shows an entire course redesigned with UDL in mind, you can start incorporating UDL today by reflecting on your own teaching. Review the content delivery methods that you currently have in place. Then curate some online media like a podcast or an instructional video that you can supplement or supplant a lecture. Offer these to students as options for how they initially engage with the content. Or revise one of your exams into an authentic assessment that gives your learners a choice of 3 items. You can keep the grading criteria the same for each option, but you're providing learners with options for how they demonstrate mastery learning. If the final assessment involves a discrete skill like writing software, allow options for how students approach the coding. The takeaway for universal design for learning is that by identifying and maximizing on opportunities for flexibility, learner choice, and variability, as an instructor, you are removing the barriers to transform learning in a deep and meaningful way.
So what is one thing you can do today to make your content more accessible? Well, you can start including alt text with your images. Screen readers need to be able to decode an image and relay that information to the listener. They do this by reading alternative text or alt text. This text is created by you. Happily, images can easily be made accessible in both Canvas and PowerPoint. What does an inaccessible page look like? As you can see, when you neglect to add alt text, a website becomes largely useless to people who rely on screen readers. In Canvas and PowerPoint, the effect is largely the same. Any image that is essential to the course material must include alternative text. This includes charts, graphs, and other types of images for course content. This is, of course, the same thing if you're creating a training, say, for your staff. Purely decorative images do not need alternative text. How do you know what kind of alt text to include? Begin by considering the image. This image, which is from a course in Canvas, is fairly simple, and the alt text can be added when you add or edit the image. When adding and or editing an embedded image, write an announcement or page, you'll be prompted by a text box that looks much like this, and you'll see that the alternative text is in the red bubble. Remember to add only the necessary details. Do not describe everything, just the essentials. You can also add images from the left-hand navigation bar. From the left-hand navigation bar, adding alt text looks like this. Don't be afraid to add alternative text beneath the image, especially in quizzes. It can often be of help to all students. Complex images require a bit more work. Here is one example of a complex image that would be difficult to describe in 1 or 2 sentences. To describe a complex image, you can use an outline. This is but one example of how to make an outline for a complicated image. For more, see Pennsylvania State University's page on accessible images. Sometimes an image is just an image. Mark it as decorative. For those of you who work with PowerPoint, those images also have to be accessible. How do you do that? Happily, it's easy. Right-click on the image, then click Format Picture. Then select the icon under Format Picture that indicates size. This is the 3rd icon from the left. Finally, click on the alt text option and include your alternative text. Don't have time to make your PowerPoint accessible? No worries. PowerPoint has many templates available, and they are all accessible. Some tips to remember. Include information you might share over the phone. Remember, just the essentials. Try to make alt text no longer than 125 characters. Think of it as akin to a tweet. Consider why the image was included and err on the side of caution. When in doubt, include the alt text. It can't hurt. If the information is technical, include it in the main text so all readers can benefit. The alt text can then refer users to this text-based description. And don't include information about copyright, etc.
We're going to leave you with 3 questions. What are 3 things you can do right now to make your work more accessible? Can you identify stakeholders or groups that may have been left out of a project you have been working on? And what longer-term approaches might you implement to make your work more accessible to these groups? And do make sure to download our top tips for more ideas.